We go south a little bit. We're going to talk about a division with 3 MVP caliber quarterbacks, 2 that have actually won the award, and then you have one that has shown the ability to possibly be an MVP caliber quarterback, but also maybe a bottom third quarterback.
In one game.
One game. He's got a 2 or 3 game stretch coming back. Jameis did. But let's start with Falcons. We know who Matt Ryan is. We know what we're going to get with the Dan Quinn defense. We know they have one of the better receivers, not only of this generation, but maybe even, we're talking all-time in Julio Jones, a guy who essentially has rewritten our yards per route run stat book and record book. Calvin Ridley looked like the first-round pick that he was for a few games to start the season, and then it kind of tailed off for him as he adjusted to the game. But the Falcons have some questions elsewhere. We kind of lowered them on from our year-end offensive line rankings to the preseason rankings, and kind of took a little bit of flack because they addressed the offensive line issue. Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry, maybe not quite how they wanted to address it, though.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that when they went to the Super Bowl, this is top 5 offensive line in the NFL, lost a lot of pieces since then. But just because they used 2 first-round picks on offensive linemen does not mean you solved it overnight. Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, we like Lindstrom a lot coming out, like McGarry some, but just because you're a top-rated offensive line, coming out of the draft, they knew with Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews played terribly as a rookie. Right.
Now
he's one of the best tackles in the NFL. You could have a very good tackle and a very good guard, and Lindstrom and McGarry both could play awful this year.
You may well have addressed it long-term, but the chances of them having fixed it overnight are pretty small.
Yeah.
I think those 2 may become top-tier NFL offensive linemen. It's just unlikely to be from week 1.
Tough to bank on them right away. It's also tough to wrap your head around the Falcons being one of those rosters over the last 3 or 4 years where we said there's no glaring holes, but it shows how tough it is to just maintain a good roster, because the offensive line was just good. It was good. And the fact that they had to throw so much resource at it this year, you can't address other positions, and you have to get better at all positions. You just have to keep getting better. So to me, the big question mark, they couldn't cover all that well last year when Deion Jones went down due to injury, and also in the secondary. So you got Desmond Trufant on one side. What's Isaiah Oliver going to do on the other side? Who's going to be that guy to truly step up? Because I think it's still going to, even if the offensive line isn't as good as it was in their Super Bowl year, if they can't cover in that back 7, they're in trouble again.
We saw their team defensive grade from us when Deion Jones was out plummeted significantly, and that was the large portion of the middle of the season for him. And that's kind of where the wheels fell off, so to speak. They do get Devontae Freeman coming back off of injury, a guy I think, in my opinion, he signs that big contract before the 2017 season, goes out and he produces again, forces 50-plus missed tackles, both as a receiver and as a runner combined. And he doesn't get talked about enough, I think, in how important he'll actually be because of the influence that he has in the passing game for Matt Ryan going forward. They do, though, have issues, I think, in the health side of the thing, and we saw that. So with them going forward, what is the most important thing for them to look at? They have Grady Jarrett playing on a franchise tag again this year. Is there a massive gap or a massive hole that we can look for or look at this year, do we think, and say that's where the Falcons went wrong?
I just think it's the fact that the offensive line kind of fell apart on them. We were saying for a while it's like they're pretty good in 3 to 4 spots, but guard is an issue. But Ryan Schrader taking a massive step back, that was a big issue. So the fact that they had felt the need to address the offensive line, I think hurts the fact that they haven't really added a ton to the secondary over the last couple of years. So I keep coming back to the secondary is the place you want to always just be throwing resources at, because it's tough to remain stable, and you've had some turnover there. Robert Alford's gone, so I think that's going to be the key, and the place that they haven't been able to address as much as they probably would have liked the last couple of years.
Yeah, having guys who they had signed to long-term deals all of a sudden just fall off the map in Ryan Schrader and Robert Alford. I think that's really what torpedoed their season outside of the injuries over last year.
Injuries were huge. So then we go Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton, shoulder injury last year. Whether that was hindering him on throwing downfield is a different story. Is Cam Newton an accurate quarterback?
No, the definition of accuracy, putting the ball where you want, he's not. He did increase his completion percentage last year, something that we've been asking for a while. Shorter passing game. He cut his average depth of target by over 2 yards. And that did lead to better production. There's a whole massive Cam Newton discussion to be had, but I think ultimately, even with the injury, he essentially regressed back into the same PFF grade that he had in 2017 or 16 and 17. So his last 3 years are almost identical. And that's even when you include the shoulder injury. And if you want to call that the big cutoff point where he dropped off, it wasn't exactly that clear. He's pretty much been the same guy. I think what injury or not, regression was on its way. But I like the fact that they're getting a little bit smaller at receiver, getting guys that can get open, getting him a few more open throws to take advantage of the fact that he's not the most pinpoint passer.
Yeah, and his accuracy is it's an awkward thing to discuss because he has a ton of plays that are incredible, right? That are perfect pinpoint accuracy. They're deep down the field. That are top tier throws by any measure, whether it's eyeballing it, whether it's PFF grade or whatever. So on any given play, he can be spectacularly accurate. It's just that when you look at all of them together, he isn't. Compared to the other NFL quarterbacks, he is not an accurate passer overall, but certainly is capable of it on any given play.
To me, the accuracy, though, is not it's not the debate. It's not the relevant thing here with Cam Newton. It's the offense that he runs, to run at a high level, to have, when they've been at their best, it has to have him as a rushing threat, utilize his legs, and have him take the ball and run it himself in short yards, that sort of thing. Can he stay healthy? He hasn't been able to of late. Can he stay healthy in an offense like that? And if he can't, can he win from an offense that doesn't look like that? To me, is the biggest question. I don't think that you can run a high-level offense with him at quarterback if it doesn't look like that, because you need that just does so much for him, the play-action game, strong running game, with him in it. It just does so much for him to give him favorable looks. And so will they continue down that path, even though he has had those shoulder issues, even though he hasn't been able to stay healthy?
Yeah, multiple years now we've heard, we're not going to use Cam as a runner as much. And it is a tough balance between I need to keep our quarterback healthy and I need to maximize what our team can do. Because if you do have to just rely on him as a passer, he's just too volatile. He's just going to miss too many throws. He missed the 2-point conversion to lose the game against Detroit last year. He just misses too many throws. He'll make the spectacular throw like you said, but you're just hoping that he's going to limit some of those misses, and then you stumble into one of those MVP caliber seasons, which, by the way, he's had one in his 8 years in the league. He's had 1 year as an elite player, and then the rest he's been a mid-tier quarterback by PFF grades. I think you just have to understand what he is as a player and figure out how to maximize that skill set.
I think there's definitely scope for them to change the way they use him in the running game. So I think I agree with you. I think you need to use him in the running game for that offense to be good or for the Panthers to be successful. But it might be time to think about dumping QB power. Exposing him to the stuff where there's no way of this play ending without him taking a shot. Start looking more at how the Seahawks use Russell Wilson or quarterbacks like that, where you still take advantage of their athleticism and their rushing threat, but you're not automatically exposing them to a big shot from a defender by running it right up the gut.
And they have one of the more talented guys out of the backfield in Christian McCaffrey that they can use as a gadget kind of player. We just talked about on the website, he has the highest chance to do 1,000 yards, 1,000 receiving yards, because why wouldn't he this year? It's possible. He might even be their wide receiver number one at this point. So a team that needs no introduction, we could spend all day on the Panthers, we could spend all day on any team, but a team with no introduction to their number one, it's the New Orleans Saints. Michael Thomas, more appropriate Twitter handle, I don't know if there is one, can't guard Mike. You look at our route data and who grades highly on all of our different route buckets across the route tree. Michael Thomas is 1, 2, 3, 4, top 5 in basically every single one of them. Doesn't matter what he does, where he lines up, but he's also got a special guy in Drew Brees getting him the ball. What do we like about Brees at this point of his career, though?
Yeah, he was awesome last year until he slowed down the stretch.
That's the worst thing. Yeah. It's like down the stretch was not the same as he was the first 12 weeks of the season.
But is that natural regression, or people just like to say, well, he's old, therefore he had a bad... I mean, I just think it was natural regression. He was playing at such a high level. He was playing most of his games in domes. That is a factor. He's very good in the dome. He's very good in those controlled conditions, still extremely accurate. I think it's a matter of just figuring out, Michael Thomas catching 86% of his targets, but who else, who are the other targets going to be for Brees so that he's not just relying on can't guard Mike.
That's the thing with anybody that's getting up there in years. When there's a downturn at the end, it's always, okay, is that the end now? Is that the start of the end?
Or is that had multiple start of the end shoulder moments.
I mean, every player goes through those, right? They have down periods, but when you're old, it's automatically, is that the start of the end?
Right.
And whether it's a down year or a down tail end to a year, it's impossible to know until you come back to the next year and it disappears or not. So Yeah, it has to be a question with Brees because he is reaching that age where most quarterbacks ultimately hit a wall. Somehow Brady's avoiding it, but everybody else hits one.
Yeah, I'm not expecting Brees to hit the wall at this point. I mean, he takes care of himself well, and I think they'll be all right. I think they'll be all right offensively, but they're going all in on this Drew Brees, era right now.
As they should. They could always play more Taysom Hill, and I don't think anybody would complain there to give Brees some rest. They do have a question mark, though. We'll go to defense, and their nickel corner, it's a who's who of Florida colleges there. We have Patrick Robinson, P.J. Williams, and then Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Is there one of those that has a leg up, or do we just automatically kind of pencil in Patrick Robinson based on what he's done previously?
Well, yeah, I think it is Patrick Robinson just because he's been a slot cornerback and done it at a high level, whereas none of those other guys have. P.J. Williams hasn't even played any position at a high level ever. But Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, also a rookie, was a slot at Florida. That was kind of his role, but rookie 4th rounder. I think you just give deference to the veteran there who's been was there a season ago before getting hurt. So I think he gets the job.
And I look at Eli Apple as one of the most pivotal players in the NFL. Marshawn Lattimore was spectacular as a rookie, took a bit of a step back last year, but a lot of that's dependent on you got to cover Julio twice a year, you got to cover Mike Evans twice a year. Marshawn Lattimore is still an elite player, but if Eli Apple can get a little bit better opposite him, he replaced Ken Crawley and did improve that position at times last year, but still that number 2 cornerback spot is going to be crucial in New Orleans because they've done some pretty good things on the back end for the most part the last few years.
And their defensive line is almost elite basically on paper. It's whether they can reach that status this year. So then we'll round it out, though. The defensive line is a perfect transition to the Bucs. They lose, obviously, All-Pro Gerald McCoy, and actually since 2011, only one time, it was Robert Ayers, did a defensive lineman on the Bucs record over 50 pressures that wasn't named Gerald McCoy. You have a team that's struggled for now going on 9, almost 10 years to actually get consistent pressure on the quarterback. There's not really a redeeming quality on the defense right now. That's why they addressed it with Devin White. They lose Quan Alexander. They do have Levante David. The secondary is a mess. Is Vernon Hargreaves actually the answer? We're not necessarily sure. He's automatically penciled in for the first 4 weeks, though, with the Ryan Smith suspension to start the season. They addressed it with Sean Bunting and Jamal Dean. But that defensive line, is there anybody that can get pressure on the quarterback this year?
Vita. Right? I think he
pushed the pocket a little bit.
19 pressures in the last 6 games, something like that. Like, he was a different player down the stretch than he was early on the season. Looked kind of like the light switch had flipped there towards the end. I think him and Sue is a good combo on the interior. I do still worry about the edge, though. No Spence, not moving the needle for me. Coming back this season, Jace Pierre-Paul, I think, has been on the downturn for a while now. He's played so many darn snaps there for either them or the Giants over the last few years. I think he's just, with 1.5 hands, not the same guy he's been at other points in his career.
I think with Todd Bowles coming in, calling the plays though too, he's a guy who loves to get after it with the blitz. He has no problem going 0 blitz. Forget no safeties, just get after it. So I think they're going to scheme up pressure. That's why Devin White is a good fit there, not just because of his coverage range. He's an excellent blitzer. So you're going to get that front 7 attacking, and then the secondary, even though there's not a lot of big names there, I at least like the fact that they've addressed it a ton the last 2 years, and just seeing what sticks back there. If nothing else, the Bucs offensively and defensively are going to be one of the more exciting teams in the league because they're going to be so aggressive on both sides.
Yeah, they've got a lot of speed at linebacker, which I think is important for those kind of blitz plays. They're going to get guys in the backfield pretty quickly. They also brought over Shaquille Barrett, who can generate a decent amount of pressure.
Right.
He's not going to substitute for an All-Pro on the edge, but he should be able to at least hold up his end of the bargain and give you a decent amount of pressure if you can form some sort of consistent rotation with blitz pressure, Vita Vea getting some, and Ndamukong Suh getting some, JPP getting some, albeit a declining amount, and then Shaquille Barrett. I think they can kind of cobble together a reasonable amount of pass rush. Their problem might be that it just doesn't matter if the secondary is still a disaster.
Yeah, both rookie draft picks last year, MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis in the bottom third of quarterback grades last year, never really figured it out a little bit there. Going forward, their offense, though, we wrote the Peter King Football Morning in America piece, and one of the biggest things to take away from that was that we said that Jameis Winston could lead the league in passing yards. Was taken to a mixed audience, mixed reviews. They're going to have to put up a lot of yards. They're going to have to put up a lot of points to even compete on offense. Jameis, year 5, this is probably it for him in Tampa unless they do win some ball games. Who do we like? Do we like their trio of pass catchers up there with the top end of the NFL's trios or even duos at receiver?
I will say, this is kind of skewing that point, but the fact that they had one of the worst running back situations in the NFL last year in terms of what they had, and then just didn't even address it whatsoever. Realizing that, hey, we got Bruce Arians in here, we're gonna heave the ball around the yard. So I did like that, but I do think this is one of the best. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and then O.J. Howard. That's one of the best 1-2-3 punches probably in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like losing Deshaun Jackson because he brought such a different, unique skill set that Mike Evans doesn't have, that Chris Godwin doesn't have. But, we always talk about Jameis, like Cam Newton, highly volatile quarterback. He was number 2 in the NFL in positively graded plays, so he's able to push the ball down the field and make plays. The issue is that he misses a lot of throws. Part of that's the aggressive nature, part of it's just general inaccuracy. But his aggressiveness with Mike Evans, with Chris Godwin, with those tight ends, I think you're going to see an explosive pass offense. I'm a little scared of the offensive line re-signing Donovan Smith, who's never been a good pass protector, and saying, okay, Bruce Arians is in here. He's going to run a lot of old school 5- and 7-step concepts, and this offensive line is in the bottom 5 to 10 in the NFL right now. So I think that's where it could be a struggle.
It's such a fascinating combination, Bruce Arians with this offense. I mean, he said when he was retired that it would take something special to tempt him out of retirement. Then he signs with the Bucs, and everyone's kind of like, well,
Jameis. He thinks Jameis is special.
Right, but just the idea of combining his offense with Jameis's kind of nature, the way he is an aggressive, volatile, deep down the field attacking type of quarterback. You've got receiving weapons there to play with. The offensive line, like you said, is a concern, but just meshing all those things together should be really fascinating. The biggest thing to me is that Bruce Arians has this offense that attacks deep down the field, and he's gotten career years out of a series of quarterbacks. But what's interesting to me is that they've typically come without increasing those quarterbacks' mistakes, the bad plays, the interceptions, the turnover-worthy plays. You would expect that to happen because you're asking them to do more difficult things, and they're making more difficult plays because of it. I wonder if he can start to chop at those negative plays from Jameis as well. And everyone's thinking about how many big plays they're going to make, but maybe the single most important thing he brings is being able to eliminate some of the mistakes he makes and still improve the number of big plays that Jameis makes.
That'd be an ideal scenario. I mean, that's
you get your MVP season.
There it is. That's Carson Palmer was a similar quarterback to Jameis Winston, pocket passer who could do the special things, would also do the boneheaded things, right? And to your point, Arians was able to elevate some of the special out of Carson Palmer while limiting the mistakes for the most part. So, see if he can do it.
Well, I did say there's 3 MVP caliber quarterbacks and a Heisman Trophy winner. The Heisman Trophy winner just happens to be Cam Newton.